All right. Thanks for stopping by. If you're out there watching, if you are out there, and I see you, Pirate, and others, Pirate, you troublemaker. Pirate was my very first super chat ever, so that was really cool. I am really excited tonight to have with me Keri Smith. You guys are going to see her in a second. She's getting her dog Tiger ready, who's going to actually be the star of the show. Because Tiger is just amazing. And I don't say that about little to medium sized dogs very often, but Tiger is awesome. And he has the voice of a very large dog when he barks. So, as always, make sure you're subscribed. Check out the bell icon down below so that you're getting notifications when the content comes out. We're going to be working on doing live streams like this on a semi regular basis. Now that my schedule has normalized a little bit and I'm kind of in. Oh, I have to do this. Troublemaking all day, all the way, bro. I'm trying to read that with Tomsky's English accent in a Jamaican style, and I don't know what to do with it. Anyway, if you're out there and you're looking for a good cause, I have merch now. Some of you know this, some of you don't. These are really cool little shot glasses. They are stainless inside and they're black coated and then laser etched. And of course, I have coffee. I'm going to make Keri talk about the coffee when she comes on because she's a coffeeholic. And we've also got other merch like this. And I sold one of my mugs to a neighbor who likes the show, and he might even be watching. And I have these low ball glasses. I'm working on highballs, and I'm going to see if we can get mason jars etched as well. And then this really big coffee mug. I'm not going to tell you that there's coffee in it right now because there's not. Yes, Tomsky says take a shot of Minnesota Black Robe Regiment coffee. Okay, yeah, it's coffee for, let's just say it's coffee. But anyway, if you're interested, email me, tcpearson@protonmail.com. And if you have me on Facebook, you can message me there and I can tell you how much it's going to cost for the coffee and for shipping, because shipping's not cheap anymore, just so you know. I'm not Amazon. But anyway, I'm going to bring Keri on now because Keri is the star of everything she does. Keri has her new, well, not new, but newish channel, Deprogrammed, that is all hers, and it is amazing, and it kind of comes from where her story is. So we're going to bring her in here. You guys remember, I am not a professional, so there we go. Keri, thank you for making time for me tonight, and hello, Tiger.
Hi, TC. Can I call you Todd or should I call you
Yeah, that's fine. My cover's
Todd?
blown.
Oh yeah, this is Tiger. He's uh he's been quite he's there are 8 dogs at my house right now. And tomorrow for a brief time there will be an overlap. There will be 10 dogs at my house.
Is that counting Tiger or on top of
counting
Tiger?
counting Tiger.
Counting. Okay.
Yeah, he's one of the pack. And then yeah, my husband and my housemate are both very tolerant to allow this.
Wait,
Yeah.
your husband? You guys have you guys also have a roommate?
Yes. Hold on just one second. They're playing in this room. Give me just. Okay, they're
No,
gone.
it's fine.
Sorry.
My dog is normally barking at like the UPS truck or the garbage truck or something. So like dog noise is perfectly acceptable and welcomed here.
I'm sorry about that. Yeah, my housemate was gonna leave and then she moved back in, so we've got quite the full house here. Hold on one second, Todd. I'm sorry.
Oh, everybody, when Keri comes back, make sure you say hi to her, especially those of you that are from the group. So yeah, Keri, I'm gonna pin Keri down here when she comes back. She has a storied history as a social justice warrior, and I did have her on the program one other time, and we talked about her journey a little bit. But when she comes back, just so everybody knows, uh, we're gonna. Oh,
You
hey,
said
Keri's
you were
back.
not a professional, but I
I
just
was feeling.
ruined Yeah, your first live stream. I'm sorry. They were doing so
No,
good and then they got all playful.
no, it's I love it. Yeah, I told you I'm not professional, so here we are, Keri. So we're gonna dance on the periphery a little bit of deprogram, just because I want my audience, not nearly the size of your audience, but I want people in my audience to come over and start checking out your program, because deprogrammed is what it, besides the name being as obvious as it is. Oh, look, here we got people saying hi already.
Hi, Therese. Yeah, long
Lots
time
of
no
people,
see.
lots of people,
Hi, guys.
and oh wait, there, there's a whole bunch of people saying hi to each other and to you. So, uh,
Well, well,
deprogrammed. Yeah, Pirate wants to know who Keri is. Um, Deprogrammed is incredibly important, not just because of its title, but because this is coming from a place in your life that you were in for quite a while. And so I want you to tell us just a little bit about the show, but then I want to kind of do as much as we can in the time that we have. I want to do a little bit of a deep dive into the juxtapositions of the very real religious aspects of where you were and where you are now.
okay.
Because I think people need to understand just how important the religious aspect is to your former life. So first, tell us a little bit about Deprogrammed and
Hmm.
um, where you're planning on going with that, and then let's start to talk a little bit about where you were and how you ended up with the
Cool.
show.
Well, Deprogrammed is a new channel, so we're actually, I don't think we're that far apart in terms of size. And it's, but the
You've
series,
got like five
the,
thousand subscribers.
oh, no, I don't. No, not yet. I think I'm at three something. It doesn't matter. But it is a new channel. The series though that it's built around, I could say the flagship series is a series I've been doing for about 3 years on another channel, and those are interviews with people. I called it Deprogram because coming out of social justice ideology, which was my belief system for 2 decades, it it was a lot like what they call cult deprogramming. And so those are interviews I do with people. At first, it was interviews just to try and understand my old cult of belief better. So it was interviews with people about specifically about social justice ideology. What is it? How is it different from the way it sells itself? And how is it that people fall into something like that and can stay in it for so long with all the cognitive dissonance that comes with speaking contradictory beliefs, which is what I was doing and a lot of people in it do. And so just trying to understand, I guess, human psychology and motivation behind getting into a cult-like belief system. And now I'm trying to talk to people not just about social justice ideology, but other kinds of cults of belief. So, for example, one of my recent interviews was with Jack Buckby, who's a former actual alt-right white nationalist. You know, everybody gets called that now if they're not woke, but he actually was. He actually was a white nationalist. He was sort of a poster boy for white nationalism in the UK. And that was really interesting interviewing him because I got to see what were the similarities and differences in leaving that belief system versus the one I was in. And there are a lot of places where I would say our experience overlaps, but then the places where they're different was also interesting and related to where culture is at, I think. So that's what that program is. And then also, if you come to the channel, I have a series I do with my friend Mystery Chris called Popped Culture, and that's a live Wednesday night show where we're just trying to talk about what's going on in pop culture. There's obviously a lot of social justice and woke stuff that comes into that, but there's a lot of fun things to celebrate. And Chris just has a wealth of knowledge about entertainment in general, really esoteric knowledge, and so he's bringing all of that to the show, and that's more of a fun, frivolous show that we're doing, just to hang out on Wednesday nights. And then we have a live show we do Mondays and Fridays. We're just talking about what's going on in the world, what's going on in our life, and hanging out with friends of the show. So that's what we're doing
Keri,
on the channel now. What?
Tomsky wants. I told everybody to ask questions here so I could filter them, and I said, super chats get first dibs. So Tomsky, of course, now is my third and still my only super chatter.
Tomsky.
Tomsky, shared this question for you. So for those who are listening but not watching, Pirate is a mutual friend of ours, and he does some work for. I think he's doing some work on modding your channel. Is that correct?
He is. I see his comment. He says, Keri, how does it feel to have so much love from your community? I think that you have some of the best moderators on YouTube. I think I do too. I think I have some of the best. You should be wearing. I was going to say you should be wearing like little glasses and a mustache disguise when you ask that, but you kind of are in your picture.
Oh, that's what I love about Tomsky is that no matter what, he can always bring some levity into.
Yes.
Maybe we can recapture the intermittent frivolity and just keep it alive still.
Yes, we can do that. Look, the dogs have already interrupted the show. I figure it's your first live stream. Yay, you've had a dog interruption already. So
get it all out of the way.
We'll just get it out of the way.
Get it out of the way.
I've just been laughing through tech problems lately. I'm like, okay, I'm gonna make it through. I have a new microphone. We've got a new setup here. I've got new lights, and we're trying to get a new computer as well soon, hopefully, and get it all upgraded. But just figuring out the back end of things has been kind of funny. I'm like, just grin and keep going.
There's another one. There's another one.
Yeah. And Therese says Keri has the best knitters on YouTube. Yes. We do have a lot of knitters.
Yeah,
probably more than any other knitting show.
Yeah, if you haven't, I refuse. This channel will not be a knitting channel.
He says as he wears a knit cap.
From one of the people in one of our little groups, yeah. But I had about the same time that I had you on the first time, I had Jennifer from everybody knows her as little ragamuffin.
Yeah.
We had her on and we talked about what she went through, which is actually just a fabulous study on just how dangerous the religious mentality of wokeism really is. Mm-hmm. And you and I have a mutual friend, Chris Williams. I know that you have spoken with Chris previous, but Chris and I have been friends for years. We have a lot of the same theological and doctrinal. K-Dub, everybody.
Oh, K-Dub. He's going to be on my show later this week.
Yeah.
Cool.
K-Dub has been a longtime friend. We share a lot of the same theological, Christological, and doctrinal positions. He's a very sharp guy, far sharper than old TC. He has a lot to say about the religious reality behind wokeism. And you walked away from that woke ideology as a social justice warrior it wasn't called woke when you and I got into it. Not when I got into it, but when you were in it, it wasn't called being woke. That's a relatively new terminology, but you really were on the forefront of being woke. It was your community.
Before it was mainstream, yeah.
Yeah, before it was mainstream. In fact, you kind of got out of it as it was becoming mainstream.
Yes.
And you had some experiences that led to that. But before that, we have an incredibly important question from Real Raven 2000 for you. You're going to have to read that.
Keri, what did you do with your mic box? Oh, it took me a second. Yeah, I had my old microphone because I had to, it's a long story, but that's funny that Real Raven knows this. Yeah, but I had to, this room had a lot of echoes in it because we're in the middle of moving. It's the longest move ever. Now we're still probably going to be here for another month and a half, but we had to move almost all the furniture out because we were showing it to sell it, and long story. And so this room's really empty and it's very echoey. And before I got these temporary sound panels, somebody said, put your mic in a box. And so I had a cardboard box that I don't know if it actually helped. That's really janky. That's like the cheapest tech setup you could have. But what happened to the box? Oh, there's books in it over there, I think.
No, it's I have to be honest. So Tomsky's watching, and he sent me messages a while ago, and this is really funny. He was like, "I love your content, honestly." And I'm paraphrasing Tomsky, so if I don't quote you perfectly, don't come in here and correct me. But he goes, "I love your content. I like watching you. I like listening to you. You got some good stuff to say, but your audio is crap."
Hmm.
And I'm like, "Yeah, I'm sure it is because I'm pretty much doing this either with a GoPro, blind, no idea what I'm looking at or who I'm talking to, or I'm doing it with this inexpensive webcam." And he goes, "Oh, we'll take care of that." And so my mic that you guys can see here, uh,
Nice.
Tomsky sent this to me from
Oh,
the British Isles,
that's so
uh,
kind.
and uh, and then another friend of mine who I've been friends with for years. We have a lot of the same theological, Christological, doctrinal positions. He he said, "Hey, your content's really good, but you're always in the shadows." So he sent me lighting.
Let there be
But then I
light.
found out, and Larry, if you watch this, I know your trick. He sent me lighting because he didn't want me in the shadows, and he wanted to know if the lighting worked for his podcast. So he didn't want to invest in it for himself until he knew whether or not it was decent lighting. So I, that's kind of what this community does, right? They
Hmm.
we watch out for each other, and that's why you've got Tomsky modding for you, and your relatively new show, and so this is what it's like to be united with people who are who give a damn,
Hmm.
excuse the terminology,
Hmm.
and they're watching out for one another. Um, Carrie, how long were you an SJW? And that's your own description. You called yourself an SJW. This
Well,
isn't something that you just like somebody put the label on you. You look back now, you were a full-fledged SJW, like card carrying member.
so we did not have cards, but yes, it was social justice. Before it was called woke, well, I came in through the feminism door and also the racial justice door. So those two areas. And I was doing a women's studies minor at Duke. So that's where I was picking up a lot of it because as part of that minor, I was taking classes in critical race theory, queer theory, obviously women's studies. And then I was part of Amnesty International, and I was a representative for my school and was going to conferences. And actually, Amnesty International is the first place where I learned the new social justice like redefinition of racism and sexism. They were doing these dismantling racism seminars way back then. This was like 97. And so I was learning that racism equals prejudice plus power and all of that stuff
That redefining
long.
of terms.
Yeah, and now flash forward all this time later and you see that stuff has reached the mainstream, but back then it really wasn't. It was kind of I would say isolated to college campuses, college classrooms, and some nonprofits like Amnesty that I was a part of, like the nonprofit industrial complex. They were pushing all this stuff.
There's one for you.
Pirate Tomsky. Carrie didn't have cards. She had placards down with the patriarchy. Yeah, so if we're going to talk about the religious nature of this, I mean, one of the things that people do in this belief system is they signal their virtue a lot. They want to make sure people know what their belief system is. And I was doing that back then. It's funny, I'm saying this because I did have bumper stickers that said stuff like that. My truck was covered in stickers that were, I would say they were an expression of my own outrage as a social justice person. A lot of these people are carrying around a lot of anger and a lot of resentment, a lot of outrage,
Yeah.
and they are looking to trigger people around them. I certainly was, and so my truck was like the back bumper was just covered in stickers. It was like, excuse me for not going to church. I've been busy practicing witchcraft and becoming a lesbian. U.S. out of my uterus.
Oh,
Um,
no. Wow, you
yeah,
had some
keep the.
doozies.
Oh yeah, it was just. Yeah, it was pretty bad. Actually, I'll tell you a funny. side story. When I moved to Los Angeles, so I went to school in North Carolina. I went to Duke University. It was a great school, but I did pick up a raging case of social justice. It was pretty
Is there
contagious.
is
Spread it to a
is
lot
there
of people.
medication for that?
Yeah, maybe we can talk about the antidote later. But I took it with me to LA, and well, it was funny driving around with those stickers in Los Angeles wasn't the same as driving around with them in North Carolina, because most people in LA, or a lot of people, maybe not the mainstream part of Los Angeles, but a lot of people in LA were certainly more left or leftist than they had been in North Carolina. Except somebody in my apartment complex, somebody must have taken great offense to my stickers, which of course they did. This is what Josh Slocum on the Disaffected podcast calls briar patching. It's where you're like, no, don't throw me in the briar patch. No, don't take offense to this thing that is offensive that I'm putting out there, to trigger you. Please don't be triggered. And then complaining when the exact reaction that you're looking for happens. So that happened. Someone in my apartment complex made a fake bumper sticker. They had printed it out on their printer, and it said, honk if you want to F this bitch. But it said the F word. And it was printed out, and they cut it the size of a sticker, and they super glued it to my truck. Now, I don't know how long it was there.
Super glued it?
Yes, because I had so many stickers on my bumper, I didn't notice it. So I was driving around with a fake sticker that said, oh no, it said, honk if you want to F this bitch, ... why, ? And I was driving around with that on there for a while. And then, that's just an aside. That's neither here nor there.
No,
but somebody did not like them.
I've been having this conversation a lot with people lately about, because you worked in an industry and I don't want to say brag's not the right, at one time it would have been bragging, but you were kind of responsible because you were representing comics at one point, correct?
Comedians, yeah.
Yeah, you were doing a representation of comedians, and you were developing shows, and people don't understand how prevalent this is in Hollywood, that it's so nepotistic, and it's almost incestuous. It's just like you get in with this group of people where you're just wrapped up in that mentality, and it's literally living in the echo box or the echo chamber.
Yes,
Ahead,
but it
Karen.
wasn't always that way. When I
Yeah.
was pushing this, it actually wasn't mainstream in entertainment at the time. And it was considered a little, it was, I was an outsider in entertainment because, I was even known as a feminist manager, and I worked with comedians who were like a lot of comedians who were putting social justice in their routines before it became mainstream. And so when we were trying to sell those shows, a lot of times I was meeting resistance because it wasn't what people were used to seeing. And these ideas were kind of new for Hollywood. Even though it was a leftist space, it wasn't explicitly social justice. And what happened is when it hit the mainstream, things started changing around, 2011, 2012. That was around the time we sold our show Totally Biased with W. Kamau Bell on FX. And that was an explicitly social justice show. But that was one of the first ones, the comedy shows that was. And when I say social justice, it was different from the other late night shows. Those were liberal, those were leftist to some degree, but they weren't doing the social justice content that we were doing. They weren't. We had a whole segment on whether or not it was problematic to tell rape jokes, and our conclusion was yes. We talked about Apu being racist.
Yeah,
did
in fact, you've talked about
right.
that you to some degree feel as if maybe you're responsible for a poo being canceled.
Well, our show was the first show. Yeah, one of our writers, a comedian named Hari Kondabolu, very funny guy, but super social justice. And I think he's probably gone further in that direction. Like some people have gone further into it in the past few years, whereas others, like myself, came out of it. But he did a segment on our show about Apu being a racist caricature of Indian Americans. And then later on, he did a special, not on our show, but from that. He did a special about it, and then I would say he single-handedly in some ways helped to bring that character off of The Simpsons, unfortunately. But yeah, we were pushing that kind of stuff in comedy, and then a few years later, when I started waking up from my belief system and questioning a lot of things, and slowly, because it's a slow process getting out of it, that's when it was going mainstream. The fact that it was going mainstream is part of the reason I was waking up, because it got so big and ridiculous, and I saw people celebrating censorship and celebrating the initiation of force, like pushing violence and stuff, and it's like, this is not what I thought this was about.
Yep. It's okay to
And
punch a Nazi.
yes, they were pushing that stuff. And so after that, it became the norm. Because
Right.
what Hollywood tends to do is, a lot of the people who are on the business side of shows, the agents, the network executives, the managers, the studio representatives, a lot of these people are not creatives. They're more like car salesmen but they work in entertainment and they sell shows and people. And so they just sort of, when something is a hit, excuse me, everyone tries to pitch that thing. It was like, well, that one worked. Okay, let's come up with something like that. And I think what happened is that you started to see enough shows that were becoming explicitly social justice, like ours was one of them, that suddenly that became the thing, and this ideology took over, and
Yeah.
now they're all pitching woke stuff. And then we saw comedians who had never even done social justice comedy before, like Jim Jeffries is suddenly doing woke, and because that's what's selling. And so Moshe Kasher was suddenly doing woke, and it became, as you said, it's somewhat like a religion, where if you question
Oh.
it, you're on the outside.
The church that I attend, and just so everybody knows, I am those who haven't been paying attention, I am a Reformed, Calvinistic, amillennial Baptist. Going, if you're not confused, you will be. So tune in for the next episode of Soap. Keri will get that reference, I bet. You remember the show Soap?
Yes. I was wondering
You like
if you really had a
Um,
show named Soap.
yeah. So if you're not confused, you will be. I like what Therese said here. Comedy should be the last place for wokeness. Absolutely.
Yes, because wokeness is a kind of Puritanism, and it sort of, it kills comedy. Can you be funny while doing woke? Yes. If you're very talented, I think you can still be funny, but it's harder to do because you're working within all of these limitations, and there's all these taboos, and you're only allowed to make a certain kind of joke. And some of the best comedy comes from taking shots at the taboo, poking the bear, doing the thing you're not supposed to do. And woke is all about saying, no, you can't do those things.
I like. Yeah, isn't that awesome? Go ahead and read it for us, Keri.
Earl Raven says, but did anyone honk about that bumper sticker? I don't know. It was LA. People honked all the time. How do I know? But you know what's funny? When I found it, I was working at the time, I was working at a small management company. It was pretty soon after I'd first moved to Los Angeles. And I was thoroughly woke, and my boss was woke, and I was working with a woke comic. And anyway, one of my good friends who was working with me, when I saw that sticker, I was telling her about it. I was like, I can't believe this. I wonder how long it's been on my truck. I found this today. And you know what's funny? She was like, oh, I saw that on there like a week or two ago. I didn't really, she was like, I didn't really understand it. Like, why would you put that on there?
This might be my first and last live show, just because this is going to be the best. This is the best. Oh, I'm going to have you on again. This is amazing.
Silly.
Well, Judson here. Judson says Apu is a good boy who didn't do nothing wrong.
You're
right.
Yeah, well,
exactly. Like they canceled the character. They canceled the character, and this is the thing. what the Simpsons do, whether they go woke or not, what people have to understand is that the Simpsons do what, and they were doing before anybody else was doing it. They were making light of the caricatures of American culture,
Hmm.
and everybody loved it before outrage culture came into effect. And it's talking about being a Reformed Calvinistic Baptist going to a Presbyterian church, um, but we've been in a place struggling with a lot of the things that have been going on since the coof. Thank you, Keri, for introducing me to that terminology, because it's now the thing on my channel. My mom is like, everybody asks me, what's the coof? So the we are in a place now where, as a congregation, we are talking frequently about what's it mean to love your neighbor, what's it look like to love your neighbor, and the conversation often centers around what is frequently referred to as social justice in our day and age. And I've been encouraged because we've taken on a study about logic in a church as part of
Good.
a Sunday school class. We're studying logic, we're studying logical fallacies, and that's intentionally leading into a conversation about critical race theory and critical theory in general. And I'm hoping to see this carry over to dismantling that, because it is very much a religion. And so, Keri, you came out of Southern Christianity, if I can use that term.
I was raised Southern Baptist. Yeah.
Yeah, I refer to it as Southern Christianity sometimes, but mostly I refer to it as Western Christian culture. You've come out of Western Christian culture, went into social justice, and now you've come into actual Christianity. And that has been a big eye-opening experience for you, because you don't consider everybody out there who has been watching me for a while, just take a deep breath. Keri, you don't consider yourself a traditional conservative. You still consider yourself classically liberal, correct?
Yes.
Okay.
B-
Okay, for
by
all of my conservative friends, classical liberalism is your friend. It's your friend. Okay. Stop referring to people who call themselves liberal, who are genuinely classical liberals, as libtards. They're not libtards. There's a huge difference between leftism and cultural Marxism and classical
liberalism.
liberalism. And Keri meets the definition of classically liberal. Doesn't mean she can't be a Christian. So, Keri, tell us a little bit about that, what it means for you, because you aren't like this hardcore conservative.
No, I don't even, but see, I don't even know what these words, you have to make people define terms these days because words have lost so much meaning. And a lot of that has to do with the influence of postmodernism in social justice becoming so culturally dominant that,
Deconstructionism.
yes, they're deconstructing the meaning of words. And so a lot of people on the left use the term liberal to describe what would more accurately be called authoritarian beliefs or an authoritarian ideology like social justice. They'll just casually refer to that as liberals or liberalism, and it's not true. And when I started trying to figure out what do I actually believe, and tearing my whole belief system down to the ground, and then trying to build like one brick at a time of what do I believe, and interrogating like what do these terms mean, I realized that's when I started realizing social justice is not liberal at all, because social justice supports censorship, it supports the use of force, it supports violence and suppression. It actually supports racism, which is not liberal. It supports judging and treating one another's differently on the basis of race. It supports sexism, judging and treating one another's differently on the basis of sex. There's nothing about social justice that meets the classical liberal definition. And I'm one of those people who, I know sometimes I'll encounter conservatives or fellow travelers like myself who've maybe left the left and they've settled in conservatism, and they'll say, you know, why are you still calling yourself a liberal? You should just call yourself conservative, etc. I don't understand that mentality, because why would we give that term? Why would we cede that term liberal to leftists who are going to use it incorrectly? Isn't it better to have a whole diverse array of perspectives opposing that ideology?
Yes.
I say conservatives, liberals, libertarians, you know, all of these people, we have so much more in common with one another than we do with those extremists. And so I see it as a positive to have both liberals and conservatives and libertarians all speaking against this evil belief system. And everybody has a different talent. Everybody has a different skill set. People have different life experience. It's going to maybe maybe someone is more inclined to listen to me, a liberal, than they are to a conservative, or maybe they're more inclined to listen to the conservative than they are to me, the liberal. Great. Whoever it is that is going to make the best argument for them, I'm on board with that. And so it's not that important to me, though, whether someone is liberal, conservative anymore. I think that that distinction has become overblown, and the media has done a great job of pitting us against each other, whether we're left or right. And so that stuff doesn't really matter to me anymore. When I meet normies who say, well, I'm a conservative or I'm a liberal, I try to figure out, well, first of all, what do they mean by that term?
What do they mean? Yeah, exactly. Like,
And then
I love that you use the term normie, because I've been using that so much lately, and people are like, well, what's a normie? And then I describe it and they go, that's me.
Well, great. Some of my best normies are friends. Like,
right.
I love normies.
Yeah. Well,
I wish sometimes I'm like, I want to be a normie. Normies are just, they're not inundated with this whole culture war thing. They're just trying to go to work, make a living, provide for their families, survive.
I love what Judson said here. You want to read that for me?
Judson says, I'm conservative. I'm trying to conserve the liberal principles of our founding. Hey, I think you were just talking to me on Twitter. I think that's a great way of putting it. And I don't know if I've ever heard it said that way before. I was asking on Twitter, like, what does conservative even mean anymore? Because I think that term's been misused as well, and probably means different things to different people. And someone, I bet it was you, Judson, was saying, well, the way I define it is I'm a conservative because I'm trying to conserve liberalism. Isn't that amazing? That's a really interesting way of thinking about it.
It's because they co-opted through deconstructionism. The left has co-opted the term liberal and has made it mean something that it was never intended to mean. And when you consider, if you look at de Tocqueville and I know you've looked into some of his stuff, because I've heard I've heard others mention him in the past. What de Tocqueville was looking at was actually classical liberalism, and that's what this republic was built on. And ultimately, I've been reading, or I just finished reading a book by a very well-known libertarian author, and his entire premise has been to talk about, or to deal with, for lack of better terminology, where conservatism went from being conservative to kind of neocon. Mm-hmm. And that neocon has come to represent, for better or worse, you always have to be pro-war, you always have to be pro-X, Y, and Z, otherwise you're not a conservative. And his juxtaposition is that what a lot of people would label as libertarian is really the kind of the classic paleo-conservative perspective of anti-interventionism, anti-expansionism, anti-imperialism, and mostly what has really kind of come down to the Monroe Doctrine of let's worry about what's going on at home. Mm-hmm. And when we allowed that fight to become how do I want to say this? And you're better with terminology than I am. So, but what it comes down to is classical or paleoconservatism has far more in common with classical liberalism than classical liberalism has with leftism.
Yes.
We really want to be left alone, which is actually why we are where we are societally. Why all of a sudden people who are showing up at school board meetings and city council meetings and all these other things are being labeled radical right-wing extremists and being put on watch list is because they're doing the classically liberal thing, which is paying attention to their elected servants.
Okay, so this makes me think of Dave Chappelle.
Right.
He tells a story about when he was young and he was being bullied. His mother gave him this advice about how he had to stand up for himself, and she talked about the lion and the lamb, and she was saying sometimes you have to be a lion so you can be the lamb you really want to be. And that touched me so much hearing that. I still think about that quote. I actually, when we got to interview Maria Tuscan, who's one of the knitters, she made me think of that quote. She really embodies that quote to me because she's someone who's just trying to do her yarn business, who has this very kind demeanor, very calm and live and let live. She's a lamb, gentle like a lamb. But then these wolves came to her door and were demanding that she bend and she bow and scrape.
Mm-hmm.
And she had to be a lion so that she could go
Right.
back to being a lamb. Like that's these parents.
Right.
That's these parents who are standing up, the normies who've had to become lions and mama bears and go into these school board meetings just so they can hopefully go back to being a lamb and just, you know, living their life. But
I've had
that's
that.
that advice from Dave Chappelle's mom. I love
Yeah.
that.
I've had that exact same experience here in southeast Minnesota, where I tend to operate out of, obviously, because well, it's called Minnesota Black Robe Regiment for a reason. Um, the the experience that I've had over the last several months, really, man, it feels like it's been so long, but it's only been since really June of 2021 when I started getting asked, "Hey, could you show up to our school board meetings because we don't know what to do?"
Mm.
Because people were they were being awakened. And I've heard you and others talk about the difference between being woke and being awakened.
Mm-hmm.
There's they're being awakened, and to some degree, all of the stuff that came about as part of the COOF restrictions and the COOF reactions has really kind of allowed people the opportunity to pay far more attention than they were paying before. But people were messaging me and going, "Hey, could you come to our school board meetings because nobody's listening to us, and we're really concerned that they're pushing critical theory from all directions, not just critical race theory, but critical gender theory, critical sexual theory, and on and on and on." And they're like, "Hey, can you show up? Can you come and document? Can you come and interact?" And my very first meeting that I went to, I watched as a school board tried to shut people down. And and that ties into all of this through this idea that you're a radical if you're paying attention. You're a
Yeah.
radical if you're speaking out.
Yeah.
Because the prevailing wind allegedly right now is toe the line and do whatever the community, whatever society, whatever culture says you should do. That's what you need to do. And
Yeah.
people don't know how to deal with it. They're they're terrified. And I get it, because a lot of them never spoke out because they're busy doing life. They're working their jobs, they're earning a living. And I had this conversation with someone today. He goes, "Well, everybody on our side is they're doing what needs to be done to continue to maintain life, maintain an income, and no one's paying attention."
Because they're not rootless activists.
Right.
And so they're having to become a lion because these rootless activists have encroached in their home, in their territory, in their very kids' lives. And those people, their whole life is dedicated to this. My life when I was social justice warrior was dedicated to spreading social justice through my career and through my relationships. So in comedy, I was working to spread it there, and in my personal life and the people I interacted with, it infiltrated everything. And I was not alone. The people my cohorts, the people I came up with who learned this stuff in school, picked it up like I did, they were spreading it in journalism, in politics. I mean, that's what you're taught is to go out and to change the world with this belief system. It's turning, these universities are turning, and now at a younger age, because I picked it up in college, but now they're trying to turn children, like little kids, into social justice activists, K through 12, you know. It's a very different world.
I'll give you an example, and I know you'll relate to this because you were in that world. I have some mutual acquaintances in the southeast Minnesota area who just went to a drag queen presentation at the local arts center here in the Rochester area with this drag queen who is now also going to be hosting a show in southeast Minnesota in the Rochester area. And think Mayo Clinic, for those of you that aren't aware of Rochester, everybody knows who the Mayo Clinic is. Mm-hmm. And they control everything in this area. And this same drag queen is now going to be doing an 18-plus show, 18-year-old plus show for people. Now, this woman, I don't even know how to refer to her. Him, it, I don't know.
Drag queens generally, they're not transgender. It's a man who's like, I am putting on women's clothes and doing a show.
This person went from doing a presentation for children to now doing a completely adult presentation here in a few days. It's everywhere. It has inculcated all of society, and that's how dangerous it has become. And this is why people are taking notice. They're very much aware of what's being done. And it's not just in schools. They're seeing it all over the place now. And sometimes to a fault. Like you can't watch a commercial now without somebody going, have you watched any of the commercials lately? There's not a single white male family or a white heterosexual family. I'm like, okay, guys, you're overreaching. But this is how much it's been pushed into the vernacular. Keri, you walked away from that life, being offended at everything, being willing to, or not willing, but like voracious in your calling out of these things in culture, to the point where now you're like, I'm calling things out, much like Josh from Disaffected does, which you have the inside scoop. Tell Josh, I'm still waiting to get him on. Because I think he can contribute to a lot of what I talk about, even though we come from disparate views a lot of times. He has a lot of insight because of the life that he's lived and what he's lived through, much the same way that you have. But you walked away from that to this place within Christianity where you found yourself in a, I don't want to say you're in a comfort zone, but you're in a place where, with your faith, where you're like, none of this is okay. This isn't okay. This isn't right. And you've struggled. I shouldn't say struggled. Maybe that's not the right word. You've really battled through that where you are in your walk with your faith, and having walked away from one form of faith to another. Is that a fair assessment?
Yes, but I walked away from social justice first. So even before before God put his hook in his nose and his bit in my mouth and steered me back on the path, is the way I like to think of it. I had already abandoned I was in the process of abandoning social justice. So I could see what was wrong with it before I found God. What happened is that once I had thoroughly shed myself of it, shed it, then there was this hole. Some people call it the God-shaped hole, but I became consumed with questions about meaning and purpose, because social justice is a stand-in. It functions like a religion for a lot of people. It gives you a sense of meaning and purpose, that you're working to spread this belief system, that the way it sells itself is a complete fiction, but a lot of people believe it. I believed it, that you're working to make the world a better place and end depression and end racism and sexism, while you're actually being used to push those things. But once I'd abandoned it, I became consumed with the question of, like, do we have a soul? About, like, I was thinking about good and evil a lot. I kept contemplating that. I remember one time I texted a friend at like 7 a.m, like, do you think we have a soul, or are we just like computer brains in a physical body? And they're like, it's 7 a.m. Like, what are you doing? Like, what kind of text is this? I'm like, I'm just asking everyone because I can't stop thinking about it. And so I started going. I had a big what my pastor now, I go to this church here in Texas called Church on the Square in Georgetown, Texas. It's an amazing church. And my pastor's brilliant, Bradley Helgerson. And one of the things he talks about is how the culture that we're living in now has inoculated a lot of people against Christianity. And I certainly have been inoculated against it. I thought I knew what it was. I had judged it and discarded it and said, that's not for me. And so,
which is a very common Southern Baptist reaction to Christianity when you've been
probably,
raised in Southern Baptism. Yeah.
yeah. So I had abandoned it, and when I started trying to answer this question for myself, and is there a creator? Is there something bigger than us? Is there something that connects us all as human beings? What separates us from the animals? What is consciousness? Like, all those questions. And I started going to a spiritual center in Los Angeles. It's called Agape. It's a pretty large church. They do international live streaming, and the preacher there, Michael Bernard Beckwith, is a good friend of Oprah's. I think she's called him her preacher before. And I was going there. It's basically, it's sort of one of those churches that's very new age also. So it's like a mix of different religions and Christianity. But God can.
Syncretism.
Yeah, but God can speak to you anywhere. This is something if you're okay with me talking like this, I'm just going to talk like this. And
no, that's fine. My mom says this all the time, and she's a fundamentalist Baptist who she's going to kick me in the shin the next time she sees me. So I'm going to stay away for a few days. But she says this: I can go to a Lutheran church and hear hear a message from the scriptures from a ELCA pastor if my heart's in the right place. So,
yes, and I believe this. And I guess when I say I'm going to talk like this, is I don't usually talk as if I'm very aware that people will listen to me on my show and who are not Christian, and so I don't want them to feel excluded. And so if you're not Christian, I'm not trying to exclude you. I'm just going to, for a brief moment, speak with someone who also believes, and just as if that's a given. So allow me that. But yeah, I think God can speak to you anywhere. And so I agree with your mom. And God spoke to me there, and I kept going, and I started sharing the sermons. But it wasn't like the church I go to now, which I never would have started at. I was so inoculated and so prejudiced against Christianity. That was really the only door I would enter. So I was going to that spiritual center for a long time, and then I ended up, once I moved to Texas, I tried a whole variety of different churches. I was going to a Catholic church for a while, an evangelical church, a cowboy church, and another spiritual center, places like that before I found. But this path, it's been really interesting. It's not anything like what I thought Christianity was. All of my stereotypes were wrong, and I'm continually learning things about human nature and myself and God, and about how to be a better person in the world, and how Christianity is not just a set of beliefs and ideas. It's a practice, an actual practice that you do every day and you fail
Right.
sometimes. And I know I've compared it before to going to the gym. It's like if you don't go to the gym one day and you fall off that horse, you know, you need to get back on the next day. And just because you've gone once doesn't mean you've mastered it. It's like continually practicing. And it's not a terrible thing. I always thought Christianity was so fuddy-duddy and fundamentalist and restrictive, and it's none of those things. It's I have an entirely different perspective on it now. So
Yeah, it's I've heard people talk about this a lot. If your Christianity it causes people to say, "Oh, you're that religion that doesn't allow you to do X, Y, and Z," then you're probably portraying your Christianity in a very um, unfortunate light. There's a freedom that comes with Christianity that I don't think a lot of people recognize. And I think that's why it appeals to a lot of people that are coming out of being woke, out of being social justice warriors. Because what I see from the SJW community, and you can speak to this, and I know we're coming up on your time constraints because you have a keto friendly meal waiting for you.
we could
Thank
go a
you very much,
little, but
Anthony.
yeah, I am.
Uh,
Anthony's making me a steak.
uh, that you have this there's this repressiveness. There's an oppressiveness in social justice critical thinking, if you want to use that terminology, where you're constantly in fear of violating the norms and the dictates of the community to the point where you could lose everything if you say just the wrong thing at the wrong time. And somebody earlier in the chat had mentioned someone like Ricky Gervais, and we just watched here at home. We just watched his special. I think it's called Humanity, and it completely, completely politically incorrect. Makes fun of everyone, Christians and everyone else, and he just literally makes it very clear that he questions the existence of God and how God could allow X, Y, and Z. But they've tried so hard with Ricky. The social justice community has tried so hard with Ricky to destroy him, and he's just doubled down and said, "I'm not going to allow you to do that to me."
Mm-hmm.
And people who walk away from social justice, walk away from that mentality, and walk into Christianity, go, I believe for years that this is the most repressive, oppressive worldview to have, and it and I'm finding it's freeing to me. It's
It's
freeing because now I can actually share and live and be who I am, knowing, and here I'm going to get a little preachy, knowing that I'm covered by the blood of Christ.
Mhm.
And people don't understand that. And and Pirate wanted to share this.
you should read it.
He says, "Keri, I think I'm the only atheist here. You preach it as you feel it lasts." And I think that's why we can connect with people like Pirate, is that no one's
Pirates
coming. Go ahead.
actually open-minded.
Right.
A lot of
Don't.
people are not. They think they are. When I was social justice, I thought I was open-minded, but I wasn't. Like a lot of social justice people are not open-minded at all. And yeah, and then there are some Christians who are not open-minded, and there are some
Oh,
atheists who are
yeah.
not open-minded, and yeah, but he's an actually open-minded person. So,
Yeah. Somebody wants to say hi.
oh hey, John Delrose, how are you? That's cool.
So actually, you know, if I thought about it, I would have sent him the link so he could come on and actually say hi to you himself. John, I had John on the channel here a few weeks ago, and
Cool.
John and I come from, even within Christianity, John and I come from different perspectives. John is Roman Catholic, if I remember correctly, and has attended different congregations, but he comes from that Roman Catholic perspective. And what I've seen in all of this, there again, as we get ready to wrap up, um, what I have watched, we bring in Pirate, and I'll bring his comment up here again. I think I'm the only atheist here. We've got, Therese, who has a Christian perspective. We have you. We've got John, who comes from a more Roman Catholic perspective. Um, what people have to understand is that sometimes the argument that we have has less to do with where each person is on a spiritual level. And I'm devout. Like there are certain things that I will not sacrifice. And Keri, I know you're in that same place now with your faith. There's certain things I will not sacrifice, but I can stand in the gap. To use a biblical terminology from Jeremiah, I can stand in the gap with people. We've got an Eastern Orthodox person here, who maybe has some doctrinal perspectives that are different than mine, and I can stand next to them and say, look, I'm in this fight with you because it matters to me, and you matter to me because you're Imago Dei, you are made in the image of God. And whether we see everything eye to eye, everything exactly the same, you're important to me. And honestly, the people who have diametrically opposed views to me are incredibly important to me, and which is why I want to have these conversations. And I'm going to be releasing a series of conversations with an individual I had just the other night, just a few days ago. And at the end of it, when we went off of recording, he said to me, you know what? There's some things we really agree on, some things that we came into this conversation that we don't agree on. But I'm telling you right now, the way you treated me, you've made me stop and think. And that's what's missing, I think, so much from the social justice movement, from the woke movement. They don't care about changing your mind. They want to beat you into submission.
Well, also, my pastor did a really great sermon about Christianity being presented as an antidote to woke. And I want to have him on to talk about that soon. I've shared the sermon, but I know people are sometimes more inclined to listen to a conversation, some people, than a sermon. And so, and I really want to ask him some questions about it. But the way he talks about it is true. In my experience, social justice is a works-based faith. You're constantly they even say, do the work, do the work. Yeah, there's no grace, there's no forgiveness, there's no redemption. Even their apologies are performative. They demand apologies. You make the performative apology. They don't accept it the first time. Then you make it again. Then they own you. And, there's a whole ritual to the way they do these demanded apologies and contrition, and you're not forgiven. Then they just own you more. Then they can extract more from you. Fit American says, can you post a link to that sermon? Yes, I will find it and put it in the comments on this video as soon as we hang up. It's a great sermon. And I've talked with people who, there's a lady I know whose daughter is high school age. She was, this culture, it's kind of hard to avoid woke as a young person. Even, I would say, even if you're not going to a public school, sometimes it's hard to avoid it. And so they're getting these cultural messages that are pushing this one kind of faith, this social justice faith. And her daughter had been struggling, not struggling, but she thought, she was like, I'm an atheist and maybe considering some of this woke ideology. But when she became a Christian, she said that her daughter told her, I'm tired of being sad and unhappy. And that really, to me, I knew exactly what she meant, because social justice does not engender joy. It grows sadness in you and depression. It grows anxiety in you, resentment, outrage, all of these things that are not psychologically healthy. It grows those things in you. That's how it keeps you in it. And it to leave that, Christianity is such a, it's like, leave your burdens. Why are you carrying all that stuff around? You can't save yourself through works anyway. Like, that's an arrogant thing to think.
And the harder you try, the more condemnation you bring on yourself.
Right. And so it's just such a relief to say, my salvation is not found in myself. And it's certainly not found in any of these performative actions. And I mean performative, whether they're social justice performative or, performative Christianity. And I know there are Christians who perform as well. I mean, that's in the Bible. It's like the Pharisees who stand on street corners and pray so that they might be seen by men, so that they might be seen. Those are virtue signalers. Like, that's performative. And and what a burden to be constantly performing. It's to let that go and come to this realization that you're not God is,
the irony.
I don't know, it's very freeing.
Yeah, the irony. I like what you brought up about the being seen by men is, and because I have no problem telling people, look, I do street preaching. It's been a couple of years because the coof has kind of stood in the way a lot of that, and I've had people go, "You're just trying to be seen by men," and I'm like literally not the case. I'm not that person.
There's a difference. There's a difference. There's nothing wrong with preaching and professing your faith. There's nothing wrong even with street preaching. The difference is, what is your goal and your intention? Is it for people to see you and say, wow, what a devout, virtuous Christian? Is
Right.
that your goal? Then you're a hypocrite. Then you're a Pharisee. Then you're a virtue signaler. Then you're like the people who put the black squares on their profile for social justice. It's like, I want to be seen as being this good person. That's crap. But if your goal is, I have this joy inside of me, I have this belief
Yeah.
that has, in a creator that has saved my life, I want to share it with others, go
It,
for it.
I was I was literally invited, and this ties in. I don't want everybody to think this is all of a sudden now become just this massive doctrinal issue. Uh, it I was invited to a city here south of me, Cedar Rapids, Iowa, which is, it's I think it's in the top 10 of the cities in Iowa. It's not saying a lot, but I was invited to go down to an event that they were having, that was at a gay pride rally, and one of the reasons that I was invited was because there were people that had been going in years past, the kind of the Westboro Baptist types, and we're pretty much all familiar with the Westboro Baptists. They're hate mongers, and they say horrible, rotten things, and they wanted these people to see someone who was willing to stand out there and share the truth, be forceful in the sense of, like, this is the truth and this is what you need to understand and what you need to hear, but wasn't coming at it from a hate perspective. And
Yes.
I had so many people, I was threatened, but I also by people who said, "Well, I'm not gay, but I hate you for what you're saying, and I'm gonna you say one more thing, I'm gonna punch you in the face." But then at the same time, had trans individuals come up to me and go, "Thank you so much. You are showing me a face of Christianity that disagrees with me, but doesn't treat me like dirt."
Yeah.
And to my atheist friends, to my friends who aren't atheists but maybe are on the left, like, I can love you and I can care about you and I can disagree with you and want what's best for you without tearing you down. And that's what I think is missing,
Yes.
is that I told you this was going to happen.
That's okay. I am. I have had I wouldn't say inappropriate. I've had tears on podcasts that I've like feel
The
embarrassed about, and
the
later
social
I'm like,
justice
whatever.
community wants you to see the other side as these horrible, mean, hateful people, and I'm like, I just want you to hear. I say the things that I say and do the things that I do because I love you, because I understand what it means to be loved in the worst of my moments.
Yes.
And if I can be loved in that, then I can love you in our disagreement.
Yes.
And that's what the SJW community doesn't understand. They
They
only love you if you perform for them. If
yeah,
you
and
do for them what they cannot get anywhere else,
that's not love.
and they will beat you into submission. And that's the one of the biggest differences between where you were several years ago to where you are now. And I have watched you kind of walk through that over the last several years, and it has been an encouragement to me. So
Aw, thanks, Todd. Yeah, that's not love. That's an abusive relationship. When you're like, I will treat you well when you do these things for me, and as long as you're giving me the supply I want. I mean, it's almost like a narcissist.
right, Josh
And
talks about that all the time.
mhm.
You know, I've been encouraged to listen to Josh say that he's been very shocked at the reception um, from Christians and conservatives. And I'm paraphrasing Josh. Obviously, you've had conversations with him, but
Well, that's because of what I mentioned earlier. I think where there's two things happening. One, I think we are in this modern culture, we're inoculated against Christianity to some degree. And
yeah,
I'll just speak for myself. I had prejudices about Christians, I had stereotypes about Christians. And the other thing is because of con artists, because of fake virtue signalers and the people that pray in public in order to be seen praying in public, those people, the wolves in shepherd's clothing, if you will, have done a great disservice to God and to God's people by putting themselves forward as representatives. And you know, I looked to those people for a long time. I let them define Christianity for me, and that was a mistake. And I understand that now. But at the time, I mean, that's what. No wonder those are the people who get pushed in the media, the mega preachers and the ones with all the scandals and the ones who we find out are hypocrites, because I mean, that serves to steer people away from God. And
right.
so I think a lot. I was surprised when I started meeting Christians who didn't fit my stereotype of Christians, and they dispelled a lot of those false beliefs I had. And that's why I say, in some ways, Christianity is not at all what I thought it was going to be. I always thought those people who act holier than thou and the type who pray so that they might be seen praying, and I didn't realize they were shapeshifters. I didn't realize they were con artists. I thought that's what Christians were, and those people are so far. Those are, what are they? God called the whitewashed tombs.
Yeah,
That's what those people are, and
whitewashed tombs full of dead man's bones.
yeah.
Tomsky, thanks so much. You know what, Tomsky, you can say whatever you want as long as you keep doing the super chats, especially in pounds, because that's more money in English dollars. I'd
Pirate
I'd pay
Tomsky.
I'd pay $5 more for a podcast where Todd doesn't cry. Joking, no, like lately where it's anger and words that I shouldn't be using. So, um, but I do get emotional. I'm not going to argue that. And Kim here, he says, "Hey, we Iowa people aren't so bad." Um, Kim and his wife produce much of my content, or not my content. I produce my own content, but they make my merch for me, and they wanted me to know that the latest the latest round of things is on its way. Um, they said you need some merchandise. So,
Oh yeah. Oh, you can. I'll talk to them.
oh,
I
do you
think
hear that?
I heard you say mason jars. I want to. I'm always drinking out of jars. Somebody in the chat once was like, "Can't you afford a glass?" I'm like, "Dude, my housemate was working at a farm that did for a while that did jerky and pickles, and so we have a lot of pickle
What a
jars."
strange combination. Where do you work? Well, we make jerky and pickles. What?
So
How does that happen?
we have like 20 pickle jars. Of course, I'm going to drink out of them. Um, I want to tell you something funny. I'll give you a moment of levity. So before I joined the StreamYard link you sent me, you had just texted me, Todd, and said, "Oh yeah, I'll be sending it to you momentarily." And then right after that, I got a text that was like a Zoom link from someone named, oh, I guess I deleted it once I clicked on it. Anyway, I opened the Zoom link and I go there and I'm sitting with some guy named Paul and he's playing Bob Marley. Stir it up. And I'm just sitting behind the scenes, like waiting for you to get there. Like, who's this Paul guy? Like, it took me. And then
Was not me. Yeah.
I know. I just got, some random person just like, maybe they were trying to take my dad off my computer, but I opened it. I was sitting in his Zoom and then you sent me the streamer link and I was like, who's this guy then? So anyway, I was going to tell you at the beginning and I forgot.
Look at what Tomsky went and did.
Tomsky.
This is why I cry. We won't tell anybody you did that.
Can I ask
ahead,
you
Keri.
something? I don't know how open you've been on your show about what's going on. Have you been open about what's going on with you? And work-wise, I guess, or no? We don't have to talk about it.
No. I mean, everybody who's been watching me, I think a good portion of why people have been paying attention, and JD can, you and he have been kind of driven my subscriber base up with the attention that you brought to my story. A lot of people have been watching because of what's been happening to me and the fact that I lost a 13-year career for taking the stands that I take, and it's been hard in the last couple of weeks, especially. I'm sitting here,
Can I ask you a question? Do you know, I know a lot of Christians, a lot of believers who are going through a very hard time right now, losing things, relationships, careers, circumstances. And do you know that as well? Do you know a lot of people going through that? Because I'm starting to wonder if there's something. I get a sense that there's this winnowing away that's happening and this strengthening. And I don't know if you're picking up on that too, but that's just something. I just seem to know a lot of people going through this process of losing things. And I've been thinking a lot about what happens when everything is stripped away as a Christian and you're left with
do I
God.
think about it? Yeah. I think about it so much, Keri. I'm like, because we live in the culture that we live in with Christianity, and this is for my atheist friends who see Christians as, just kind of this happy-go-lucky and just everything's perfect because I'm a Christian and I know where I'm going when I die, so nothing affects me. Like, no, like there's a weight. There's a weight, and when you're losing, if you're a grounded Christian, the first thing you have to ask yourself is, am I being chastened? The scriptures tell us in different ways and in different places that God is a good father, and that a good father chastens his children. And when his children are wayward and things are happening to them, the first thing that they should do is not to raise their fist at him and say, why are you doing this to me? But they should be asking themselves, what have I done to be chastened? And so I struggle with what am I being chastened for and why? But I also struggle then with like, okay, maybe I have to not see every single thing that's happening to me as a chastening, in that maybe these things are happening apart from that. But then I get other Christians who come at me and like, oh, God doesn't ever give you any more than you can handle. Well, hogwash, read Job. Read the stories of all of the 12 apostles. And for those of my Roman Catholic friends and my Eastern Orthodox and Russian Orthodox friends, I know that you have different views on that. But just the original, the church fathers all saved John, suffered and died for their faith. And so I'm in that balance, Keri, where I'm like, I'm trying to say, okay, God, what are you teaching me here? And how much of this am I suffering because I've allowed, or maybe properly said, I have brought my Christianity into the realm of where I'm at in a socio-cultural political position,
Mm-hmm.
much like the founding fathers of this nation, and have been willing to say, I'm going to stand on these things because I believe this about God. And it's hard, and it's been really difficult, because if you don't know where I've been, I wasn't wealthy, but I'm not where I am now, I'll tell you that. And and just 2 days ago, my only mode of transportation for the second time in as many months took a dive on me,
Mm-hmm.
to the tune of probably another couple $1,000s to fix. I'm not in a position where that's easy.
Mm-hmm.
And those things weigh on you. And you know this because you've been there. That stuff's hard. And I'm over here going, why? How much more? How much more
I've been
can I
there.
take?
I've been there.
And
I
then I come and then I'm like, okay, Keri, do you want to do this tonight? Because if you don't want to do it tonight, I'm going to be okay with that. And I'm glad you did. I'm glad you wanted to do it because I wanted to talk to you. But I'm over here going, what's it even matter anymore? Why do I even do this show anymore? Because I've lost everything because of this. I mean, I haven't lost everything, but I'm on the verge of that.
Yeah.
So why even bother? What good has it done me? It hasn't saved me anything. It's just made it worse, you know.
But what's
So
it
I don't
give?
know if
But
that's
what
what you
has
were
it given
asking me,
you?
but
Do you still know what it's given you, or are you struggling to find the purpose of the show?
well, at this point, I'm doing it because I'm committed. And I'm a stubborn jerk. So uh, I I don't know. You know, sometimes it's good for me, and if it's only good for me, then that's all that matters. And if there's somebody else out there that's helped, um, someone else who's emboldened to stand up and understands that there's a great risk in it, but they're willing to take it, then I'm okay with that too. I don't know if that answered your question, but yeah, it's
It,
been hard, and it's been dark.
yeah. So I think what's happening to you, I think you're right to think of it, it's not necessarily a chastening, because sometimes you get into those places of, is this, it's not always, I don't think, a discipline. It's not always about some kind of punishment, or it's actually, I think, about not having the big picture of what God intends. Someone sent me a verse recently that really hit me, and it said, you intended to harm me, but God intended it for good. And
Yeah, that's from
that
Genesis
says, from
chapter 50,
Genesis
Joseph
50.
speaking to his brothers. What
And
you intended for evil, God has intended for good.
for good. And that says everything, because a lot of times I think as humans we're in the middle, you're in the middle of this storm or this thing where it's like, this is awful, it's painful, it's you're looking at it only as the storm and as a trial. But I don't have God's big picture, and I can't see that. And sometimes if I'm lucky, I can see it on the other side, and I'm trying to remind myself that that's generally been the case, is when I'm in the middle of something and I can't see what it is, and it's about, I think it's about causing us to rely on that faith and stripping everything away to where there's just that faith in God. And it's like there's nothing else that's going to catch you. And maybe what's happening to a lot of the believers I know who are going through stuff like this is, maybe this is a time of strengthening and making us strong for something that's coming. And so I'm thinking of it that way, because I'll tell you, if you get through all these trials that you're in now, I know you're going to be stronger on the other side. And
Well,
so,
I'm glad I'm glad that you can see,
yes,
because I the last couple of weeks I get up and I'm like, you know what? I'm done. I'm done.
I know that feeling.
Right.
And then, but if you stay with you stay, what's the best way to put this? Sometimes it's really just, okay, God, that whole one day at a time thing, like, get
Hmm.
me through this day. I have faith in you. I know right now, in some ways, this is supposed to make me cling to you more. And I am. And my faith has not been shaken. And so if your if your faith is shaken in a time like this, um, I think that's the only way you can fail. Everything else is a success. No matter how, even if you don't make it out of bed today, Todd, but your faith is still there, like that's a success.
Tomsky said that I inspired him. Well, that's I don't even know how to respond to that. Thank you, Tomsky. And I don't know if you saw Yolanda's comment, but if he can take something you never imagined losing, he can give something you never imagined gaining.
Yes. Yes, Yolanda. Hi, Yolanda, by the way. That's the other thing is, so sometimes when I know when in the past, the trials that I've come through, I can see, you don't know what's in the unknown. And that's a scary thing when you're moving into the unknown and you're losing things that you've known. And there's always, there's this fear of what's going to be in the unknown. And there have been so many blessings in the unknown that I could not have imagined or predicted or orchestrated for myself if I had tried to play God and avoid pain and avoid hurt and avoid suffering. I would never have found those blessings.
You know,
So,
it's my dad was called home, if you will, um, in 2005 in a work accident. And when you're in the midst of that, I was just talking to somebody about this today. When you're in the midst of that, you're like, I, I don't, I, okay, like there's a blessing here, really. And it's funny because that day he had called my mom. He was driving for a transportation company hauling cars. If you've ever seen cars hauled across the United States on the back of a tractor trailer, he was driving one of those. And he had literally watched a helicopter crash on the interstate in front of him. I mean, not directly in front of him, but he had watched this helicopter crash, and all four of the passengers got out and walked away from a helicopter crash. And he called my mom when they're getting ready to do their devotions, is my understanding. And he says, I've seen everything I could ever see in life. And 4 hours later, he was dead. And when you get that kind of news, you're asking yourself, what could this what good can there be in this? And it took walking past that for me to realize that drove me into understanding scripture in a way that I never understood it before.
yes.
And that was in 2005. So here we are 17 years later.
Yeah.
And, uh, and I'm like, okay, what was that for then? If it was going to drive you into the scriptures, if it was going to drive you into understanding, then what was it for? And why? And that's been the kind of that rock and the stay in my mind through all of this was, okay, what was it for? And are you going to abandon that now after everything else that you've walked through? And you've walked through some hard stuff in that time. And so we got some people commenting. I didn't tell people that to get people to.
I
I
want
don't
to
know
read
how to.
this one.
I don't do well when people. I'm not good with this. Go
Me either.
ahead, Keri.
Just, I had a friend tell me, just smile and say thank you. Don't, when people will give you a compliment or a gift, don't do what I used to do when I was young and be like, and push it off. Just give the gratitude, right? Okay, so this OJ Snoop gives you $10 and says, TC, you are not being chastened, you are being rewarded. Screw the suited dogs and screw this satanic system. That's what I'm talking about, is that you can't see the big picture sometimes when you're going through something that looks in the moment like a trial, but when you get on the other side of it and you have greater context and you're like, this was a blessing in disguise that I couldn't see when I was in the middle of it, feeling all those human emotions, you know? Rashi, difficult being a Christian. I'm reading all your chats now. Freely
No,
giving
I
up one's will to the Lord, not being a slave to earthly pleasures. I fail constantly. Turning away from God won't help because deep down you'll always know.
yeah.
Yeah.
And Tara, consider the lilies of the field. And for people who don't understand that reference, Jesus' words, he literally tells his disciples, look and consider the lilies of the field. God has clothed them, and yet here they are today, and then tomorrow they're gone. And Tara, that's supposed to be encouraging, but it's almost painful. um, so it's
They're not toiling, the
no, they're
lilies.
not. They're just living the way God intended them, and God clothes them in ways that are far more splendid than any human being could ever dress. Thank you, Pirate. You did inspire me. He says you did the right thing. It cost you a lot, but it didn't cost you everything. And you're right. I say that because I feel like I'm always on the verge of that right now, and it's hard. But I haven't. I still have a lot, and a lot to fight for. So thank you. And Therese says this to you. Carrie says, exactly, Carrie, you never grow when you have no
Yes.
hardships.
Yes. Yes. And you know what I've started to think about? I think a lot of people are living their life on pause and they're not
Oh,
growing. And
absolutely.
in some ways, I grew up kind of late. I started growing up late. I didn't leave woke until my late 30s, early 40s. I didn't find God until then. And sometimes I'm tempted. I was talking to Slocum actually, who, he's an atheist, but in terms of leaving woke, we were talking about, kind of waking up, what's considered later in life, I guess. But it's not late. It's actually not late. Some people don't wake up at all. Some people don't start living at all. They're on pause their whole life. I know people who, there's all different kinds of things that people worship, that they put in this place of reverence, even if they don't realize that's what they're doing and they're a slave to those things. And let me just take one example. I know people who, and I was one of these people for a while, they worship alcohol. And and I know people who are just sleepwalking through life to that next evening with the next drink, and they're still doing it, and they're in their 60s, and it's like, when do you stop doing that? When do you start living and quit living your life with the pause button on? Like, how are you growing at all? Because you're constantly having to reset yourself every day. You're constantly checking out, tuning out, and numbing yourself to the to pain and hardships and the hurt, and you're not taking risks, and you're just not growing. You could be like that. And I used to think that that was maybe the minority of people, but now I'm wondering if that's maybe the majority of people. I don't know, but maybe a
I
lot of
no,
people are
I
just on
I
the pause button.
no, I think you're. Sadly, I think you're probably far more right than I want to imagine. And I've been saying this when it comes to socio-cultural views for a long time, is that like everybody's complaining about how bad the world has gotten when it comes to how elected servants and appointed servants are leading. And I'm like you, this is your fault because you've been asleep.
Yeah.
And when I hear Christians especially complain about the direction their church has gone or the direction that their church is going, uh, I'm like, this is your fault. It's your fault. And um, and I want Christians and I want atheists. I don't want you woke. I want you awakened to see like you have got to stand. Like I'm a nobody. I'm a like I didn't have the connections Carrie had. I didn't know famous people. I know famous people now. Well, they're famous in my world, but um, it, people like Keri and others who have these huge followings. I know them and I count them as friends, but like we could sit here and blather on our shows all day long. Not that Keri blathers; everything she says is important, but we could literally blather on all day long, and we can exist in these echo chambers. But if you people who watch these things, who don't have a channel, who don't have a platform, so to speak, if you don't go out and take action, then everything that we utter from our mouths is pointless. And if you're not out there taking action as well, and that's why I started speaking out almost
Todd,
2 years ago.
Here's
It's
the
because
thing.
go ahead.
It's nobodies. We should want to be nobodies. I mean, that's gets back to this humility thing and thinking you're God. I mean, I don't know if people. I don't know if people can easily survive becoming a person who has a lot of worldly success. I think some people have managed to do so. I think Dave Chappelle's a great example of someone who's struggled very hard to remain a nobody, to remain somebody who's not doesn't let that stuff go to his head. I get that impression from him anyway, but I think that's probably very hard. And so I'm sorry, I just wanted to jump in on that comment because that's the most important. Everybody doing what they can and speaking truth in their life and trying to be a better person and trying to take their life off pause. And that's the most important thing you can do. And it's such a trap to become a somebody. Like, look at Kanye West. He's someone else I respect. But what a struggle that is to have that much power and fame and attention on you. And to start to drink your own Kool-Aid and believe the hype and think that it's you, and thank God he found God, that he found all of that wanting. But I think he's an exception. I think a lot of people get to that level and they're just like consuming their own Kool-Aid.
I like what Kim said here, and Keri, I'm going to need an email from you so I can connect you to Kim and his wife. They're my merch people. Not the coffee. They just do the other merch.
I love the coffee.
And, Kim said, "This is the most inspiring chat ever. God bless you both." And that mostly comes down to Keri because she's got a really good story.
It comes down to you, Todd. How are we going to go out on a happy, positive note? Because I'm going to go eat a steak.
That's like, no, it is a positive, and well, here, I'll let you play off of this. This is what Tomsky said.
Ha ha ha, kiss ass. Who's the kiss ass?
Me, because I said that you have a. And then here's my friend. So here's my other Patreon, my patron, Larry. He bought the lighting for me. So now I just, instead of being shadowed and whitewashed, I'm bright whitewashed.
He gave you the light.
Yeah, he gave me the light. Larry is a good brother in a lot of respects. Doug says brilliant interview pair.
I think so.
Yeah.
You'll have
It's
to
so
come.
nice.
You'll have to come
Keri,
on my new channel now.
I would any time that works for you, Miss Busybody.
I'm busy taking it day by day.
I know.
And getting out of bed, thanking God for the morning.
Yeah.
And for the pain. Here's something I've learned. If you pray, I've learned a lot recently. That's the other silver lining of hardships. You learn a lot, and I have to hold on to those things. And those are silver linings. And if you pray for something, God will answer it. And sometimes it's really painful. And then you're like, why did I pray for that? But that's not how I expected it to go, God. I saw it happening in a much, more pleasant way.
Right. Yeah.
Humble me, God. And then God humbles you and you're like, okay.
My mom used to tell me, don't pray for patience because God will not give you patience without giving you something to be patient about.
Yes. Right? That's the way it works. Isn't that funny?
And I just want to. I told somebody else this story today that my parents both came to Christ shortly after I was born. So that tells you what kind of baby I was.
They needed patience.
uh, uh, Tomsky says that he gave you the light, I gave you the mic, you gave us you. Thanks, Tomsky. Therese, here, I want you to read this one.
This has been such a wonderful chat. Thank you guys so much. Thank you, Therese. I had fun hanging out with you. We've had dog problems. Check.
Got that out of the way.
Talked about woke, coffee, God.
Yep. Coffee, people.
I'm glad that I found the correct link and wasn't sitting in a Zoom with Paul all night.
Yeah, that's
and Bob
random.
Marley.
Some random person named Paul sends you a Zoom link and you just click on it. That's like, you're so trusting. I'd have been over there going, nope.
It's like, install this on your computer. Okay.
Sure. What could possibly go wrong?
Oh man. Okay. Todd.
Well, Keri, I really appreciate your time, and I appreciate your hubby being patient.
He poked his head in here. That's why I'm gonna go.
Of course, now your steak's probably no longer like a perfect medium rare. Tomsky says, Keri has a steak waiting, Todd. What are you doing to her? Exactly.
And the broccoli. Don't forget the broccoli.
Steak and broccoli. Yeah. Keri, give us a quick parting thought.
Parting thought. Well, just what we were saying. If you're going through a hard time, take it one day at a time. Yeah. I know that's so. All these things that used to sound cliche to me, I have somehow become very meaningful now. I'm like, okay, I get it. I get what that means. So, anyway, thank you, Todd.
No,
thank you guys for hanging out.
I wanted my audience to meet you again, and for us to have a genuine conversation. And like the last conversation was genuine, but I let the live streaming gives it a level of levity and truthfulness that I think sometimes is easy to miss out on when you know you're recording. So
yeah,
I really appreciate it. And anytime you want to have me on, you reach out and let me know. I know you got a packed schedule, and you tell Mr. Slocum I've been chasing him for months. So
I'm gonna see Slocum soon. Anybody who's in the Texas area, or if you want to travel for it, we're both going to be at the Better Discourse Conference in Fort Worth, Texas on April 24th. And you can find out info. You can get tickets at Better Discourse event. And there's going to be a great lineup of people, but I'm excited to finally meet him in person. I've been threatening to meet him for a while.
Tell him that I'm terrifying and that you don't think he can handle a live conversation with me.
Reverse psychology doesn't work on Slocum.
But tell him that anyway. So.
No. Cool.
No, you tell him I'm going to keep hounding him.
I'll tell him that.
All right, Keri, you go enjoy your meal. I'm going to do a close after you get out of here. And
okay.
Let me know when you guys. Let me know when you and your hubby want more of this. Like I said, I'm the coffee crack dealer. The next.
Yeah, we'll have to get on your subscription list.
You take care.
Okay.
Love you.
Good night. Bye, guys.
Bye. Hey, everybody. That was Keri. She is an amazing soul and an incredibly sharp person. And if you have not yet gone and subscribed to Deprogrammed on YouTube, I strongly recommend that you do so. She is worth the listen, and she has a lot of wisdom, and she has a lot of people that are worth listening to. I'm just gonna do it again. I'm gonna shill. I'll even put it down below if you want to get any kind of merchandise. I'm working on finding someone to make the beanies. I am putting the email address down below, and here we go. Maybe. That is the email address if you want to reach out. Kim, if you are watching this still, I will get you in contact with Keri so that you can help her out with some of her merchandise because I'd like to support other patriots. Ladies and gentlemen, once again, please go subscribe to Keri's channel. Make sure that you are listening to everything that she puts out. It's so important for us to not be defeated in this battle against woke culture. There are people out there that will listen if we just take the time to heed them. And buy my merchandise. Yes, Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. And for all of you who've commented tonight, especially the super chatters, thank you so much. You have touched my heart. It was a great conversation. I'm glad that Keri and I were able to make it happen. And I'm glad for everybody that tuned in. And please go out and share this so that people can see what the kind of awesome that Keri is. Okay, she deserves that. She is a phenomenal person, and I'm glad to call her friend. And I love her in Christ as a sister. And I love my atheist friends as well. So, as always, for all of my friends, until next time, Sic Semper Tyrannis.